All right, here we go. Welcome to the DFI Podcast, where we go deep on Web3 infrastructure and use cases. I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Ishan Tordia, and our guest, Zac Cohen. Zac, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a number of weeks, and obviously thank you guys for having me.
We've been looking forward for talking to you for a number of weeks as well, so super excited.
Well, there's a lot to get into. I mean, we had a really good discussion leading into the podcast. We want to talk to you a lot about what's going on in Web3, use cases. There's probably a lot of avenues we can take it. Maybe the best place to start, especially for folks listening, if you can just give us a little bit of your background before you got into crypto, where you're coming from, that would be a great context for us to set.
So my name is Zac Cohen. I'm currently the COO and co-founder of Filebase. We are a layer 2 decentralized cloud storage provider. We're an IPFS pinning provider. We work with a lot of customers in the IPFS space, but I'm a salesperson. I'm a marketer. I have had about 20 years of experience in the data center space, predominantly for virtualization, Series A type companies. I was a part of a lot of acquisitions, Unidesk into Citrix, VM Turbo into IBM, and FS Logics into Microsoft. I rode the wave of virtualization. And, as the data center has evolved and looking and getting into obviously Web3 now with what we're doing at Filebase, it's not a question of if, but when. And so I made the leap into Web3. It's been about 5 years plus now. I feel like, 1 year in Web3 feels like 30 in the real world. So I feel like an old man, but excited to be on the show. Wes and I go back for a number of years now, and excited that he's doing this with Ishan. And I think we have a lot to cover.
Completely agree. Maybe a next kind of bit of your background before you got into Filebase. What were the first crypto projects you're working on? What was your first intro? Was it Bitcoin or something else that got you started?
Yeah, I knew about Bitcoin pretty early, actually. My co-founder and our CEO told me about Bitcoin in like the 2010, 2011 timeframe. He was actually one of the first miners that I knew about. I bought along with a few friends one of those Butterfly lab rigs, the first ASIC. I should have plugged it in, but I ended up selling it on eBay when it arrived for a lot of money. And, I was happy at that point. But, we started Filebase because of what we saw at the time, 2016, 2017, before the DeFi boom. People still were trying to figure out what the heck is Bitcoin and some of these projects. And Web3 in general started to get obviously a lot of attention from the VCs and just from the broader community. My co-founder is an engineer by trade. As I said earlier, more of the sales and marketing hat. And, as an engineer with 20-year plus back-end web services experience, he came to me and showed me decentralized storage. At the time, I was working for Western Digital. I spent about 5 years there in the data center space, working actually with your good friend Stefan on the Alliances team. And, I was the DigitalOcean account manager. I worked with companies like Packet, Equinix, Datto, et cetera. So really good understanding of like dollar per terabyte cost of the cloud, why people stay on premise, why people go to Wasabi, Backblaze, just really good understanding at a exabyte level scale. And, looking at some of the earliest projects at that time in the Web3 space, there's a lot of white papers and cat videos, as I like to say, and not a lot of real world applications. And decentralized storage was one of the first true examples outside of like financial services and DeFi, et cetera, of real world applicable, tangible value to a business or to a personal experience or application. We all probably use Dropbox or Google Cloud or iCloud. But the thing that interested me about decentralized storage and having my data background, data's not in one single place. It's, as we go down the rabbit hole, it's spread out all over the world. And everybody on this listening or watching on this call, you all know what happens when my cloud goes down. Twitter's down, Amazon's down, etc. We've all been affected by it in some way. And the thing that drew me personally, as a techie, as somebody that loves computer technology, it was interesting to get back some of that control and actually think of a world in which, my data is not sitting in Ashburn, Virginia in a building unencrypted somewhere. I remember zip drives. I remember, obviously floppy drives and all of that. And I think having 20 hard drives in this room right now, we like access to data. And so decentralized storage is really cool, adding a token element, whether people call this the Airbnb for hard drives. So everybody that isn't familiar, the general principle of decentralized storage is that we all have data. We all have computers, we have iPhones. Most of them are sitting partially idle. at some point. They're not 100% full. And so the premise is that these networks, these layer one protocols and blockchain companies will effectively pay you, Wes and Ishan, for your data. It's you have the hardware, you have your computer, you're paying for internet, all the stuff is online, but it's not being used. And so a lot of the utilization of all this data in the world is as big as some of the cloud providers out there. And so the general principle is, taking commodity hardware off the shelf and turning it into something greater. And so that was really interesting to me. The problem and really the genesis of Filebase is that this stuff is hard. Everything that I just said probably flew over people's heads. And unless you're technical, unless you're maybe an engineer or developer, you struggle with it. And so I always talk personally, whether I'm talking to customers or people like yourselves or anybody, you have to make it simple, stupid. And it's the grandma use case. And I struggle a lot explaining this stuff in sentences at the dinner table during Thanksgiving. And so we put our heads together at the time and we tried one of the earliest decentralized storage projects, the Saya project out of Boston. Filecoin was still a $300 million ICO. It was not live yet. And my co-founder downloaded the blockchain, 60, 70 gigabytes, whatever it was at the time, got some Saya coin on an exchange, waited 12 to 24 hours for it to sync the blockchain. You have to have it sync the whole way. And he was able to successfully upload and retrieve data. Amazing. But the problem is that everybody on this call and the everyday mom and pop, they're not going to go do that. And so, as this ecosystem evolves, even through till today, the last 5 years, Filebase has helped to make decentralized storage consumable, easy to use, and as simple as Amazon S3. And so early on, we standardized on the S3 API. Most people know what Amazon S3 is. It's the reason why Jeff Bezos is a billionaire. Second service created by Amazon, launched in 2006, 2007 timeframe. You go to Dropbox, you go to the Wall Street Journal, that image is loading from an Amazon data center. And so the S3 API is open source protocol. We took that and applied it in our world to the networks that we support. So we were the first layer 2 for the Saya network. We were the first layer 2 for Storj. We added support recently for the IPFS network. And as all this has evolved with like the NFT boom and everything that's happened over the last 5 years, we're still the same company. We're still offering a managed service. And I think regardless of the networks that we support or kind of what we're talking about, the general premise of what we're doing is trying to make it easy. So we're a SaaS solution. We're not a blockchain company. We're not a token. We're a cloud storage company. And so you come to us, Wes or anybody on this call can get access to free storage, confirm your email, and off you go. And if you want to get technical and if you want to, deploy a custom domain and have yourname.com and have that point to an IPFS bucket and have that be decentralized and have that pair into an ENS domain. And there's a lot that we can go down in the rabbit hole, but you can think of us like iCloud for Web3.
Very cool. So I had a few questions from your experience at like Western Digital, and you said you were like each of these corporate companies have 4 to 6 copies of their data. Is most of that data unencrypted?
Yes. First off,
okay.
when you send data to Amazon, it's called client-side encryption for a reason. You send data to Amazon. iCloud is a little bit different, obviously, because of how Apple works with security. But most public cloud providers today, it's all unencrypted. You generally will have to, or it's recommended that you encrypt things prior to sending it anywhere, unless not your keys, not your whatever. So Ishan has the ability to go to Best Buy and buy a hard drive. You put the data on a hard drive, that's unencrypted also. If somebody steals the hard drive, they can get your data. So there's physical access to data and where is that data sitting? And then once you have access to that data, how can you interact with it? And, with Web3, there's a lot of different ways that we can, talk about this. There's public projects, there's things that are private, there's things like Arweave, which is immutable. So there's not just one type of data. Amazon themselves has 6 to 7 different classifications or products of storage: frequent access, infrequent access. There's something called Amazon Glacier. If you want to spend $1 per terabyte and get cheap storage, Amazon will take your money and you can do that. but you have to wait 12 hours to get it back. And so you have to click a button, wait for an email, and then Ishan has his grandmother's baby photos, a day and a half later. You might pay 50 cents on the dollar, but that's the experience that you're willing to pay for. Companies like Backblaze, Wasabi, Box, anything that is cloud storage where you upload a file and then you instantly can share it with a friend or open it or play the video or whatever, that's hot storage. Instantly retrievable, accessible. That's what we do at Filebase. It's a hot storage product. That's what most cloud storage environments are like. People don't want to wait for data. I have a saying, slow is the new down. If you're slow, you're effectively down. And so performance, price, performance, security, those are pretty much the main tenets of storage.
Interesting. I had just always assumed that like even stuff on Google Drive and Dropbox or whatever, like all of that storage was like, encrypted at rest. And
think about it this way. If I can guess your Gmail username and password, can I get your Google Drive information?
Yeah.
It's that simple. Yeah. And so you have those access keys. S3 has access keys also. The running joke of S3 is that S3 does not get hacked. Whenever you hear of Amazon getting hacked, Amazon doesn't get hacked. They have some of the best security and data centers in the world. It's not like somebody's going in there with a USB stick and stealing something. It's a folder or a bucket that is public that some user or someone has the token or the ability to view a file or something. It's not like they're hacking into Amazon and stealing, Wes's baby photos or something. So it's more of a misconfiguration. This user should not be having this visibility setting or something.
Yeah. I just had assumed. I mean, look, I think the weakness will always be on the user side with like, these really highly technical cloud providers like Amazon that have put a lot of investments in their technology and their security.
That's why people don't want to run data centers. That's why Amazon's one of the largest companies in the world. It's hard to go, build a cloud. It's hard to, keep all this stuff running. And depending on the type of data you have, you may have a need. People aren't going to go put racks of servers in their basement. So it's easier to pay Amazon a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 a month to go do that. That's how Amazon got big. They went to Fortune 500 companies. They said to the CFO, you have all this space, you have all these people, you have data centers, fire all of them, move everything to the cloud. And then they're stuck in Hotel California. To answer the second part of your question, what I learned during my time at one of the largest, data providers in the world, businesses and enterprises have multiple copies of data. They have to, whether it's regulated because of HIPAA, et cetera. A bank, they have to have multiple copies. They may have a mandate to put data on many cloud providers. But this is ubiquitous. Multi-cloud is a thing in Web 2. Multi-cloud will be a thing in Web 3. Our product is multi-cloud. So if the next biggest thing, if Wes comes out with Wes Coin, and that's the biggest storage token that you've ever seen, and there's all these great benefits, we'll be able to interact with that. And so we're
airdrop pending. Wes Coin airdrop. Get ready. TBD.
That's the benefit
Safe harbor.
That's the benefit of a layer 2. A layer 2 provides the agility. A layer 1 provides the network and the foundation. And so we help customers work with layer 1 networks and protocols very easily.
Very cool. All right. So you mentioned, Filebase is like AWS for Web3 or file storage for Web3. Can you go deeper on how Filebase actually works, what products you offer, who your customers are, kind of thing?
Sure.
What are some of the things that you've seen that you find interesting in that space?
So from an early standpoint, when we first launched the initial MVP of the product, we allowed S3 API support. So we have a proprietary S3 connector. The Amazon S3 spec is over 100 pages. We've basically adapted that in a closed source way and applied it to the networks that we support. So the first network we supported at the time was Saya. You have to go obviously interact with tokens to go do that and run all of that stuff yourself, including the renter module. There's a renter and a host. So if Wes wants to give away access to his data, he would be a host. I would be a renter. We're a managed service. So, we help customers put data on these networks very easily. Today, we focus on IPFS. We'll probably spend a few minutes and explain what that is to people that don't know, but IPFS is actually not a storage network. It's a protocol. It's something similar to HTTP. So when you go to http.wesfloyd.com, you get Wes's website. That's hosted somewhere. Just like when you go to the Wall Street Journal and you're looking at that main photo, that comes from somewhere. 99% of this, the answer is Amazon. It comes from an Amazon server somewhere in Ashburn, Virginia. The problem with all of this and the benefits of networks like IPFS is that the data can live anywhere. And so what we do is we actually run all the hardware ourselves. So we work with cloud providers, bare metal providers. We don't put any data on tier one clouds like Amazon. We'll talk about that in a second because there's a cost to that. That leads into your point earlier of why people have so many cloud providers, because it's expensive. There is a cloud tax today that exists. And that's why, benefits of Web3 have become interesting to developers, creators, enterprises. But we're a managed service. We have an S3 compatible API. So from a high level, if anybody on this call or any business or enterprise is using S3 compatible tools, whether it's an SDK, whether it's their own proprietary code, or even if they're storing data on Amazon, you already know how to use my product. You already know how to use Filebase. And so it just works. s3.aws.com becomes s3.filebase.com. You have your access key and your secret key, which is basically a username and password. And all of your existing code works without any configuration change. And that's really the secret sauce and the key to how we've been able to help to onboard over 1 billion files over the last 5 years to Web3 in general, is because of this translation layer. I have a saying, and this really speaks to the Hotel California problem. Web3 and Web3 storage, decentralized storage, all of this, if you can't get data out of Amazon, it's all going to fail. It's not going to work. So from a high level, and this is where layer one networks struggle, is adoption, evangelism, education. People listening on this call may not be technically capable or may not know half the stuff coming out of my mouth. That's okay. It's still early. There's a lot of time to learn. It's, you asked a question earlier about use cases. We've seen so many different types of use cases over the last 5 years. It's crazy. We have people using us for replacement of traditional cloud methods. They want to back up a copy of their information. They want to serve information, static image hosting, take a photo, send it to a friend, take a movie, build a product with it. But we also have had people, and this is where we get into IPFS, that want access to decentralized storage. They don't want to be reliant on Filebase or a cloud. They want to be able to go grab their data whenever. And so the interplanetary file system is a protocol that allows access from a distributed ecosystem of services. And so there's gateways, which basically are community run, third party run. Wes can run one on its laptop. And it basically points to this world and allows people to retrieve data. When you send us a file, we'll give you back a CID, content identifier, which is effectively like a long WEP key. It's a string of text. That string of text basically refers to your file. The benefit of this is that it's deterministic, it's verifiable, trust, not verify, and you can do with it what you want. And so a lot of these NFT projects, you hear the word rug pull, you hear all this stuff. That's no different than what happens when the cloud goes down. If the NFT project stops paying their Amazon bill, all the JPEGs get deleted. And so, the benefit of introducing decentralized storage into your project, your workflow, your business, is that your users, the people actually using your service, get to retain something. And so they're not reliant on your website, your brand being alive. If they buy an NFT or if they buy a car or whatever, that it's like putting something in your wallet. And so it's a little bit more tangible. It's something that you can go and access 24/7, through these gateways and through these services. And there's, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of developers actively using this today. There's a lot of different types of use cases that will cover across Web 2 and Web 3. I think Web 3 is the biggest thing in Web 3 right now is obviously NFTs, digital media, assets. People in Web 3, whether it's a project or a service, they want to be able to offer access to their customers, using the ethos of decentralization. So they've embedded IPFS as a service. The problem with IPFS is that, the data has to live somewhere. We've seen a lot of projects wrap Web 2 and Web 3, and so it's really just Amazon under the hood. We're doing the inverse. When you send me a file, I'm pinning that file to multiple countries. And so there's a lot of resiliency and redundancy built into our product. This is called geo-replication. If anybody from the storage world knows the 3-2-1 backup policy, Ishan, if you have your grandma's photos, your baby photos, you don't just want a copy of that. You don't want it like somewhere where it can get destroyed. You want to put it in multiple places. Put a copy in the US, maybe put it on iCloud, put it in a USB stick in your drawer. Businesses, they do this the same way with business continuity. They don't just have one cloud provider. So this is where the cloud tax, and really the problem in general with the cloud is it's 3 times the cost of data transfer for data storage. So if Wes uploads 1 terabyte, we'll take an iPhone example. I have my iPhone. It's $23 per terabyte per month to store that 1 terabyte in Amazon. If you want to send that to Ishan, it's $93 per terabyte to transfer it to him. It's 3 times the cost of data storage. Now, if you want to replicate that data and you want 3 copies, that's 112 times 3. Now you're paying hundreds of dollars per terabyte just to ensure that your stuff isn't down or gone. And so this is where most enterprises, most businesses, Amazon's great at giving you $100,000 in Activate credits to get you on your system. What happens when the credits run out and you have a $20,000 cloud bill every month? That's not even talking about serving content. What if you have a business or a service that has 10 million users? What does your cloud bill look like then? And so this is a big industry. There's, many billion-dollar companies trying to displace Amazon to be the next Amazon, etc. I think with how we differ and why this is so different, we're not beholden to that cost. We have a much lower cost basis in general because of our architecture. We pass those savings on to the users and to the customers. So a Filebase customer, no lie, saves 80 to 90% immediately on their cloud bill just because of how much cheaper we are, not only for storage, but bandwidth transfer. We are $15 list price per terabyte for bandwidth transfer. Amazon's $93. That's a huge savings for companies, especially if you're trying to, share a lot of data. And so we've seen bandwidth heavy type use cases, take a single file, share that to 1 million people. Things like Filecoin are better suited for archival use cases. That's where you see a lot of open data sets, satellites, images, large files that people don't want to touch. It's infrequent access. You upload a file, you may touch it once or twice a year. You may be willing to wait. And so, this just goes to show you that all these things work so differently, and not one of them is going to win. Because again, Amazon and the cloud today, there's many different types of storage. And so as the world evolves and new people come up, I think our job is just to keep it simple, to make it easy, to make it consumable, to make sure it works. Things like IPFS are really important to the ecosystem because it offers a different experience other than HTTP. It gives users a lot of control over the location and accessibility of their data. If you don't want certain people to see it, you can do things to kind of make it hidden or masked, but data on IPFS is designed to be open. That's a big difference also. It's not designed to be private. If you want private encrypted storage, we talked about this earlier, you can either encrypt it yourself prior to uploading. If you send data to Amazon or anyone today, that's unencrypted. So technically someone at Amazon can go find your data and see it. Or if I break into Ishan's Gmail account, I can find his Google Drive information. There's not a password on any of that. So there's a lot of different things that developers, creators, software engineers, people have to think about. But I very much believe in a multi-cloud world. I very much believe that Web3 storage, it's not a question of if but when. But what we're doing at Filebase, we're not walking into Bank of America trying to rip and replace them from Amazon. It really is about the types of data that you have. What are you trying to do with Web3? What's the benefit to your business or to your product or to your company to actually introduce IPFS or decentralized solutions? Are you trying to embed this? Are you using this for internal uses? But we have seen, probably some of the craziest use cases. I can think of a handful of different customers. We have a very large lingerie store that got bought by Playboy that's serving all their static images on their website using our service. We have NFT marketplaces utilizing our service. We have node hosting providers. Think of like the RPC, services that run Bitcoin nodes. They want to look at introducing IPFS support. And even go back last year, we even had Chia miners come to us because a completed Chia plot is about 100 gigs. And so they need a place to store that, cost effectively. So we have seen just about every single type of use case that you would think with a cloud provider. We've also dealt with bad actors and, a lot of malicious content on the network. So we do a lot to keep our customers safe. We do a lot to ensure that they have an Amazon-like experience at a tenth of the cost.
Well, Zach, one sort of related sphere of questions I'd love to get your perspective on, because you see such a wide variety of use cases and all these use cases all revolve around data.
Yeah.
Thinking about Web3, there's been sort of evolutions, like there was decentralized finance was a big application for Web3. And then there were NFTs, and now maybe there's going to be decentralized social media. Decentralized science is coming into the mix for generative finance, maybe decentralized machine learning or AI. There's just all these new verticals. If you were a VC with, a couple years
Yep.
runway and you had a lot of capital to invest, are there any specific aspects of Web3 that you would like to invest in that you think have the most potential to drive real value over the next few years?
So, I think infrastructure in general has gotten a lot of attention. Accessibility in general of these projects, obviously what we're focused on, has always been of interest to me. I do a lot with accelerators, mentoring different types of storage startups in the ecosystem. That's, my bread and butter. That's the world that I come from. I'm not a finance person, so I can't really speak to DeFi and yield lending and all this other stuff that's a little bit over my head. But I think, as we've seen over the last few years, the ability to get up and running with fresh capital and just launch a product has never been easier. I think execution is really important. Education in an evolving space is important, not just launching a white paper or, an NFT project or something. As I said earlier, there's a lot of white papers and cat videos in the space. So we've seen a lot of fly by night things also. Having not only product market fit takes time, especially in an emerging ecosystem. So I don't expect people to have product market fit. I expect founders to have founder market fit. Do they understand the problem that they're trying to solve? Do they have enough domain relevant experience to pull it off? Do they know how to craft a team? What's the interpersonal relationships like? And so I think rather than industries, the things that motivate me are the people that are doing it. Why are you doing what you're doing? I left, a career at one of the largest companies in the US to dive into Web3. I did it because, I was tired of being acquired. I was tired of working at a big organization, and I wanted to take a shot. And I haven't been happier. They're every day I wake up and I get to try something new, and I get to fail every day. And so, I love rejection. Being a salesperson, I've been told no a million times. It's giving me a thick skin, but you have to fail fast. And so you want to find founders that fail fast and iterate. We've had failures. We've had a lot of success. We've pivoted a little bit. You can't stay stagnant in a hyper evolving world. Web3 moves at the speed of light. I thought that cloud moved fast. I thought that virtualization moved fast. Data center. This is, as I said earlier to you guys before we started the call, 1 year in Web3 is really 10 years, and we've been doing this for 5. And so I feel like a grandpa at this point, with the scrolls at the top of the mountain, just pontificating. But I think that the type of projects that I've seen that have been interesting to me involve abstraction, anything that makes it simple and easy for the user. Wallets are complex. People get hacked, clicking on a link, just even finding half of these projects on Google, you could get your money stolen. And so there's a lot of pitfalls just with interacting with Web3 as a regular person, let alone an investor or anything. So I think that's why it's so hard to build a business. 90-something% of businesses fail. I think if you just stay long enough to either survive and or make it work and get to cash flow profitability, that's the key when you're in startup mode. As we talked about earlier, it's a grind, it's a hustle. So you have to find those types of customers quickly. You have to evangelize them. You have to make sure that they have the tools to grow. We spent over a year building out our technical documentation page. We have over 500 different guides and tools. What is IPFS? What the hell is decentralized storage? Why is this interesting? What are some of the use cases? How do I get this to work with unstoppable domains or the AWS CLI or JavaScript? Or we thought about that, and we thought about why people are using our product and our technology and how they want to use that. We looked at the UI, and I've never spent so much time looking at landing pages and home pages. And it's hard enough for people to understand Web3, let alone use it.
Well said. No, this onboarding the next billion users is something that we talk about all the time. And most web users today, they go through the website, they have their experience, and then the reality of Web3 is a little bit distinct. You guys are building a lot of the sinews to build that maybe Web 2.5.
So on that note, I get asked that question once a week from VCs, and people, they say, Zach, how is Filebase going to onboard the next billion users to Web3? You'll probably laugh at my answer. And I say, we won't.
I love that answer, actually. Let's offboard the last billion users.
think about Dropbox. We're building a thing that is going to be that thing is going to be built on top of. We're the storage layer. So we're not going to be the ones to do that, but maybe one of our customers will be. And so we're just here to make it performant, to give them what they need to scale quickly and do so without going bankrupt because their cloud bill's too much. And so if I can just do that right, we'll be a very big business. Storage, in itself, we always get asked, are you going to go do compute? You're going to go do this. It's hard enough to get storage right.
Well, are there any risks that we should call out in this move to Web3 and decentralization? I mean, Sean and I talk a lot about the regulatory risks in various countries and those sorts of things. You guys are exposed to interesting risks from a data perspective. Are there any sort of caveats, like rules of the road for folks that are, let's say, developers that are wanting to get involved in the space they should be thinking about?
I think, for depending on the network, the answer, it's a classic salesperson thing of it depends. It depends on the network you're talking about. Some of these decentralized protocols, take Saya, for example, there's no one to sue. It's totally open source. And so there's no company or thing to shut down. Obviously with SEC actions and, determining, is this a security? Is this not? That may affect our ability to offer that product. But, we're not a blockchain company. We don't have a token. We're a SaaS company. So we don't have any, even with the ebb and flows of some of the coin prices of the storage tokens, that historically hasn't and doesn't impact our operating expenses, our bottom line, our ability to execute. We're separated, thankfully, from a lot of that, and we're insulated from a lot of the Web3 crypto stuff. We're a cloud company. We're using these technologies as our world way into this world, and we're helping customers gain access to it without having to do it themselves. I think that the IPFS in general is open. So when people think of decentralization, they think of censorship resistance. And so you'll never see that on our homepage. We're a US company. We're subject to DMCA and takedown. If you're hosting something malicious, just like any other cloud provider, we have to block access. We don't have to remove the file, but we have to at least block access. So you deal with that. You deal with bad actors in a truly open ecosystem. I think as these things evolve and kind of get a little bit more defined, the biggest risk for decentralized storage is the protocols and the layer ones themselves. If they cease to exist, I have nothing to sell you. And so, it really depends on what network you're talking about. With IPFS, it's a protocol, so there's nothing to shut down. So we can continue to offer that indefinitely. That's not really something that will ever be impacted unless people decide that they don't want to use it. Things like Filecoin and some of these other projects that have tokens, that's a little bit more difficult. And then the biggest thing with decentralized storage is there really isn't a lot of projects that are HIPAA or SOC compliant. With decentralization, you give me a single file, it's split up and sent out all over the world. Let's just use a basic example without getting into specifics. It's not in one location. There's 10 copies, there's 30 copies. The problem is that I can't give you a physical address of where that data sits. So for things like HIPAA compliancy or SOC certification, it gets difficult. And so banks and financial service firms may be the last to move into Web3 storage, but there are plenty of use cases today for a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's a lot of different types of data out there. So I think you have to understand that, especially if you're a developer, or if you're somebody that wants to learn about this. It's not going away though. It's only going to get, more prevalent in the ecosystem. So I think the types of use cases that we've seen are early adopters, people that want to introduce IPFS related services, projects and businesses that actually want that verifiability in their asset or their image or their piece of data. And then just overall as a storage product, people want the ability to retrieve their data from this new world. They don't want to be beholden to keeping their data, on a USB stick or whatever. And so IPFS and IPFS as a service And what Filebase does allows people to upload data to this new decentralized world without any tokens, without any wallets, without any crypto experience, required. We even have had Web2 companies use our product without their end users even knowing that Web3 is there.
That's really cool. Something that really resonates with me that you guys clearly care about is the fact that Web3 and decentralization is like a means to an end, in the sense that like you're trying to build a better product at a cheaper cost for your customers than it is like, hey, we're decentralized, so come use us, right? Like
Web3 should not cost more than Web2. That's my first point. And decentralization is a hyper loaded phrase. It's like the word cloud. People hear cloud this, cloud that, like, cloud's up there. What does it mean?
Yeah.
For us, especially with IPFS, because it is open, when you upload a file, you get back a hash, like a long string of text. That's your information. You can go retrieve that and go around me completely as your data provider. If I disappear and I'm gone tomorrow, your baby photos aren't lost. You can go retrieve them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of any Web2 cloud product that works in that way. If Dropbox goes bankrupt, unless you move your data before they go bankrupt, your data's gone. And so, that's the thing that really excites me, is to how do I get more people to understand the power of that? We're not competing with iCloud or OneDrive for those kind of things. It really is about, a lot of data that needs to be shared. So as new use cases evolve, I think you'll find that this new world is, again, it's not a question of if but when, but it's like, what's the candy wrapper like? How do people interact with it? The old saying used to be, nobody ever got fired for buying Amazon. What is that going to look like in the future? It used to be IBM, and now today it's Amazon. People go to Amazon, and all these Web3 projects, you hear this every day, Solana Validator and this and that, they're all on Amazon. They're all on Amazon because it's easier and they offer a one-click experience. And people don't want to actually run the physical hardware and deal with the technical complexity to actually do it. We do that every day. It's very difficult. It's not easy. You get a power cord, a cable, and an IP address. We do everything else.
Very cool. One thing that you mentioned, and I'm curious about, is that you said, if Dropbox goes down, like or goes bankrupt, like people can't get access. What happens? I guess the opposite way of I was thinking about this. Let's say like I put a bunch of stuff on Dropbox and then I delete it. Like I know,
there's been stories of this where like your cloud company or whoever, they say they're going to delete something, but they have a backup somewhere, and then somebody leaks that image or whatever.
Exactly.
Not my key, not my coins, not my bits, not my bytes. It's that's the risk you take with a managed service. You personally are ensuring and trusting that service with your data in exchange for the monetary goods and services you're giving them. You trust, when you take a photo on your iPhone and that goes into iPhoto and iCloud Drive, you trust that Apple's not going to lose your data. You may be preconditioned to believe that over time because it's Apple or because it's whoever. That's why they call them the big four. Most large companies have a mandate where they put data in multiple clouds, not because they want to spend money, but they're doing it for, resiliency and to ensure that their customers are never affected. It's more of a continuity plan. So I think those things aren't going to go away. The Web3 projects aren't going to displace Amazon anytime soon. I know this from my time at Western Digital. Some of the larger cloud providers that I worked with, it was all a rounding error compared to Amazon. Amazon spends millions of dollars a year. They buy hundreds of thousands of hard drives every quarter. And so that's a lot of data. It's a lot of data, sitting there. Something like Filecoin, fun fact about Filecoin has 20 exabytes of available capacity sitting idle.
Right.
That's larger than Backblaze, DigitalOcean, Wasabi combined. The problem with Filecoin as a project today, it's less than 2% used. So adoption, education, and that, like you said earlier, that Web 2.5 on-ramp, the only way this stuff is going to scale and the only way these charts are going to go up, you got to get the data out. You got to go find the use cases. Just offering this as a public good in today's day and age, unfortunately, isn't enough. You have to help people understand why it's different. how it's different and how they can benefit from that. And I think, you know, crypto projects struggle with that every day. I see that every single day. They don't know how to sell the thing that they built because they're all engineers. They're sitting in a basement coding.
You touched on something I was going to ask later, but since you touched on it, I'll ask. Can you do like, I don't know, a quick analysis, or what are your thoughts on what are the different pros and cons of like the decentralized storage products available today, like Saya, IPFS, Filecoin, Arweave, and how does that compare to like, AWS and GCP?
So like I said earlier, Amazon has 6 to 7 different classes of storage. For different price points, you can get different tiers of storage at different rates with different windows of accessibility. There's cold storage and then there's hot storage. Hot storage is iCloud, Amazon, Dropbox. Wes uploads a photo, he gets the share link, sends it to Ishan. Ishan clicks the link. You can see that immediately 2 seconds after you uploaded it. That's hot storage. Cold storage is my example from earlier with Amazon or a tape drive or something where you upload a file and you have to wait 12 hours to get it back. That's generally how Filecoin works today, unless they have fast retrieval. You have to wait about 12 hours. That has a low cost point. The data that is meant to be on that network is infrequent access. It's something that it could be a lot of data, it could be a little bit of data, but it's not meant to be transferred often. Okay, so think of backup archive. You want to back up your laptop, you want to back up whatever, but you're not going to look at it, but you also don't want to pay a lot for it. So you put it there. That's one example. Hot storage are things like Saya, IPFS, other projects where the protocol or the token or the way that it works is that the upload process happens however it happens, and you can get that data back immediately. That is what a majority of the world expects when they think of storage. That's what a majority of businesses use storage for. They obviously use 20, 30, 40% of their data in an archival manner, whether it's for regulatory or whatever. But you go to the wallstreetjournal.com, if that image doesn't load, you're going to close the page and go somewhere else. And so, as I said earlier, slow is the new down. So the ability to access data quickly is really why these cloud providers are a behemoth. They've built a way for people to have a managed service where I give Amazon my credit card and I trust that it's going to be there at the time they say it's going to be there, always, like clockwork. And so that's the challenge that Web3 storage has to overcome. A lot of these networks aren't that fast, aren't that performant. And so we had to go build a caching layer on top of that. We're not beholden to Cloudflare or Bunny or Fastly. We built out our own CDN because we didn't want our customers at 2:00 in the morning to get shut off by Cloudflare because of some issue. We don't want to be beholden to anybody. So we actually built a multi-region worldwide CDN that we bundled into our product. And then customers don't have to pay 2 cloud bills. They don't have to pay for CDN. They don't have to pay for cloud storage. It's all configured and easy, turnkey, ready to go. Then there's Arweave. And Arweave is the only example of what is called immutable storage. Immutable storage means that you cannot modify or delete the file after it's created. So think of Ishan's resume. You have the DFI podcast up there. Let's say you go, get a new job as a founder or you do something else. You would pay an Arweave token to persist this to the Arweave blockchain. The way it works from a high level, for those that aren't aware, it's designed to be, it's the only example in Web3 that I can think of off the top of my head where the data goes on a ledger. It goes on the actual blockchain. Saya, all these other projects, IPFS, data is distributed and only the metadata goes on the blockchain. So the data is distributed physically on nodes all over the world somewhere, but the actual metadata is centralized on the blockchain. Arweave is different because you can't, like I said earlier, once you take your resume and you upload it to the network, if you want to modify that file, you have to pay again to re-persist the data. If you want to, and you can't delete any data. So think of like a MongoDB database or something that is mutable that needs to be modified every day, week, hour, month. That's not a great use case for that because it'll be too expensive and you can't delete anything or modify anything. So you're going to just keep paying. That's where hot storage is important because hot storage generally won't have a cost to replace or to overwrite. It's more just about the total amount of storage and the bandwidth transfer that you're sending it to. So if you have a large file, you send it to 5 people versus 5 million, there's a cost difference. So, this just goes to show you on my rant here that, there's a lot of types of data and there's a lot of different types of networks trying to, win it all. And I'm a firm believer 5 years in that not one network's going to win. So it's going to be a multi-cloud world. Layer 1 networks and protocols really have to understand the customer and who they're selling to. Layer 2 companies have to make it easy for people to understand how these things work and how they can work with the things that they're already working with. And that's the role. If I do my job well, these networks become the biggest thing since sliced bread. So, data on the Filebase platform helps to make, these network charts go up.
Very cool. I feel like I didn't know even someone who worked at Protocol Labs and someone who's, been in tech, I didn't know about Amazon has 7 classes of data and right, and obviously we knew about hot storage and cold storage, but still this is super interesting. So I feel like, I'm learning a lot. I hope the listeners are learning a lot, but very interesting.
Awesome.
One other sort of related type of storage scenario, have you ever seen from more crypto native projects, like maybe a smart contract wants to invoke some storage and it wants to pay in crypto natively, even let's say without fiat?
We get asked that all the time. I think, payment in integrating wallets and accepting payment in crypto is certainly something it's been something that we've been asked over the years. We're focused on a little bit different of a use case where we want customers to pay us in US dollars. We integrated Stripe. And so, that's the interaction that our customers interact with us. The ability to invoke a smart contract and the benefit that gives the user, that's obviously a very Web3 native thing in terms of how that would be used. So I always tell customers, don't overthink it. Don't add extra layers of complexity. It's just storage. It really is. And so if I'm involved in that conversation, you're the customer, Wes, the first thing that I would ask you is, well, why do you want to do that? What's the benefit to your user that provides? And even if you just put that to a side, if I'm not here and they try to do that on their own, they would probably put the data on Amazon anyway. And if they were to have that conversation with Amazon, Amazon's going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. You can't do that. So I think I haven't seen a lot of benefit in that world. There's obviously unlockable NFT content and, using wallets to unlock specific things. Data on IPFS is public, but there are ways to make it private or hidden. We've seen different types of interests, but it's not the main use case, I think, today, and the main reason why people are driven to it. But it's certainly within the realm of possibility as to how people could use it.
It's good to get your perspective because you probably hear a lot of different solicitations from different scenarios. One of the things that we've been spending time on is, and by the way, happy L2 summer, Zach. It is officially L2 summer. But one of the fun things that I've been learning about on the side more recently is this data availability challenge that a lot of rollups have.
Yep.
In order to scale, they need to be able to persist blockchain data, and the more they can scale, the lower the gas fees can be and things like that. And I'm seeing some of these data availability solutions essentially be like blobs, look up real-time quick lookup for blobs.
And they need hot storage. So we work with a lot of indexing services. Subsquid is a big customer of ours. And so they index all the blockchain data and they have to store it somewhere. They're not going to put it on Amazon because it's too expensive. So they put it on Filebase and they use IPFS to do so. Those types of use cases are great because those companies, they need fast storage. They need it to be relatively cheap. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to go put data on Amazon anyway, because that's the only thing that can give them the performance that they're looking for at that point in time. With, back to the comment of how Filebase was created, we had to go download the Sia blockchain just to interact with storage. We had to go do that from the beginning. This is why companies like QuickNote and Alchemy, et cetera, are so big, because they help Fortune 500 companies, just like DigitalOcean or Dropbox or AWS, have access to blockchain data just like that with the click of a button. All that data has to go somewhere. My running joke of the metaverse last year was that all these JPEGs and cat videos and NFTs and toilets, virtual toilets, they all have to go somewhere. And so all this metaverse stuff was going on Amazon. And so, that Web3 isn't going to work out unless you change your perspective of how things should work, and you have to take risks. And so, people are too comfortable with defaulting to the status quo. I'm here to help people understand that there's other ways to do things. But yeah, we've seen some funny use cases.
So out of like, do you have in your head like maybe an order of magnitude of how many customers have ever asked for like crypto native payments? Like, is it less than 10 or is it less than 50?
So Filebase has tens of thousands of active users. We've uploaded over 1 billion objects plus 1.3 or so onto Web3. Probably easily under 50 times, probably under 20 or 30 times over the last 5 years. Probably like an email or an intercom message every so often. Do you accept crypto payments? It's generally not from the US that's asking that. I don't know why. Who knows? I think it's important to not discourage the conversation. And I think it is important to consider. But again, the service that we're offering is storage. We don't have a token. If we had a file-based token, that may make no, don't give me that look, Wes. I'm not here to plug a token. It adds complexity. There's no value to us as a service.
So I asked because like I've never bought that, like, the main purpose of crypto is payments.
Yeah.
Like FedNow just came out a month ago or something like that. On the back end, they've like sped up payments and lowered costs, right? And with the introduction of central bank digital currencies, like we're going to see lower costs and payments. And so like when people are like crypto payments, I'm, like it's cool that it's there, but like it has to be cheaper than it has to be cheaper than credit cards. 2, it has to be easier, right? And right now it's not easier. So I've always thought that like for like companies like yours that are some sort of managed services, or they're building a classic B2B SaaS company, but they're doing it at, their back end looks different. They're using a different technology, like accepting, credit cards or debit cards or ACH transfer made the most amount of sense.
Yeah, I mean that's, we offer a free tier for that reason. We want people, no credit card required. Just confirm your email. You have access to 98% of the full paid service. It's a free to paid model, just like Amazon. Amazon works in the same way. They offer 5 gigs of storage. If you like the product, you swipe your credit card. DigitalOcean, Wasabi, Backblaze, the list goes on. iCloud, etc. Most cloud services are a free to paid SaaS model in general.
Right.
And so I think that's what people are preconditioned to. I think if you want to go to your point, Wes, get 1 billion people to use Web3 storage, I don't think they're going to do that by, having to go get a wallet. Like if step 1 in the instruction manual is go get a Rainbow wallet and then go do this, you've already lost most of the people that could be a potential customer. So I think, just getting them to understand what IPFS is and the benefits of like, why do I use Filebase versus Backblaze versus iCloud, all these things, that's a hard enough challenge for me to evangelize and to educate and to tackle in the short term. Long term, as we develop more use cases and as, this stuff, a good example is IPFS you can't go to your Safari iPhone right now and type in an IPFS link. Brave is adding IPFS support. Chromium is working on it. So we're not at a point from a market maturity standpoint where that link can resolve on your Mac or your iPhone or anywhere. But we will soon. It's not a year away. It's probably, less than 5 or 10. But once we get to that point, and when it's ubiquitous, just like HTTP, the need for that managed service, like think about HTTP. Wes, do you have a personal website, wesfloyd.com?
I do. Well, no, I don't actually.
Okay. Ishan, do you have a website?
Yeah, ishan.me.
Okay.
So
where's that hosted?
Namecheap?
.me, iCloud.
Yeah.
So iCloud. So, that's just one example. Why haven't you made that an ENS domain and decentralized your website? Probably because you don't care and because you don't want to pay for it. Maybe.
Yeah, it's just too much hard work for me. It's like it exists. Like it's great. Like, like.
So that's, that to change that Web3 and Web3 storage has to change that narrative to really make an impact and to be more than a rounding error. But, I always tell people if we can just go get 1% of Bank of America's data, we'll be in a good place. And so, you just got to go find the customers where they are today. You have to help to evangelize and educate and help them grow and scale with what they're trying to do, because your customers are going to be using your product in ways that not only you didn't think about, but in ways that, surprise you and really push the boundaries of what you're building. And so they make everything better. So, founders, VCs, talk to your customers, talk to your portfolio companies, and, try to find the pain.
Well
I
said.
100% agree. I feel like for me, like I would use like a Web3 version of like Google Drive or whatever if it was easy. Like,
You can
it's
go to
just
filebase.com. You don't need so funny enough, we built something called IPFS3. We built the desktop application. So you can drag and drop a folder onto Filebase. It goes into a bucket and then you get back a CID.
very cool.
I wanted to share also, we have a promo code for listeners.
Yes.
So I did something special prior to this call. We're going to be giving away 1 month of our paid plan. So it's a $20 value for anybody listening. Go to filebase.com, select the $20 plan, enter the code DFI in the checkout, and your first month's on me.
Very cool.
Thank you for that. That's going to be helpful. We're going to put that in the show notes so folks have a link to the website and also the promo code DFI.
Awesome.
So they can get started for free. And also, startup program. Could you tell us a little bit about the Filebase startup program, how they can get involved?
So the last year or so since introducing IPFS is by far the de facto gold standard of how businesses and Web3 native projects actually interact with, storage today. And it's definitely the chosen way, to persist data. We launched IPFS over a year ago. We've had a lot of traction. Majority of our business is IPFS related to date. And we launched a startup program about 2.5 months ago with the goal of helping early stage startups. We were bootstrapped for 2.5 years before launching the company, before taking an outside round of funding. We know what it's like to have to go and build a project from the scratch. And we didn't want people to have to go do that on Amazon and on Web 2 because of everything I said on this call today, whether it's the ability to scale the business, getting hit with a cloud bill after that initial startup program, credits run out, or just being able to say that you built Web3 using Web3. That's another saying that we have. Build Web3 using Web3, not Web 2. And so we launched a startup program. Companies that are early stage, there's pretty basic criteria on our website. You have to be a real company, selling a service or product. Go to filebase.com. It's a simple Google form, filebase.com/startups. And we'll give you up to a year of credits, over $1,000 of credits of services for free. There's a lot of companies out there that struggle with actually trying to get IPFS off the ground. We do a lot of white glove service, helping people understand how to use it with their projects. We do a lot of marketing activities. So actually at the end of this month, we're going to be coming out with our first customer showcase from the startup program, actually showing some of the people in the program and how they're using Filebase with their project. So it's not just free storage, it's marketing efforts, it's Twitter spaces. We want to help, like we talked about earlier, Wes, find the next thing, to bring that billion plus users over to Web3. And it's all going to be built on Filebase. And so we launched the startup program, have had over 50 plus applicants and accepted parties into the list. And we're going to start to publicize that shortly. So thank you for bringing that up. Filebase.com/startups.
Yes. Well, no, thank you so much for joining today. Ishan, I want to give you some space if you had any other follow-up questions before we wrap.
I think all my questions answered. This was great. I feel like I learned so much, like every time, This,
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on, Zac.
Much fun as always. We learned a lot. We had a blast. And Zac, we hope to have you back on here again at some point in the future so we can stay up to date with what's going on with the ecosystem.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Cool.
Cheers.